All right, good afternoon. Thank you for listening to my presentation today, and I'm going to talk to you about does caffeine stunt growth? A common belief that has been spread down through, generations in marketing and many cultural beliefs. So what exactly is caffeine and what does it do in your body? So caffeine is a naturally occurring stimulant. It's found in over 60 different natural plants such as tea leaves and coffee beans. Um, it's most commonly found on the shelves in coffee, tea, energy drinks, and soda, as well as multiple other products that you can find. It's going to help raise your alertness, increase your metabolism, and raise your heart rate as well. And then it's also going to stimulate your nervous system. And this is where the belief comes that with all those combined and the effects it can have on your body, that it's going to stunt growth in the youth. But more importantly, it's going to stunt growth factors. And growth factors are essentially a buildup of three main things, which are going to be your genetics, which kind of set the blueprint for your height and how tall you can be. And then your nutrition, which is very important, as you know, in every diet. And that's going to be kind of the building blocks in that blueprint. And it's going to decide how big your body gets and how big your muscles are, all that. And then your hormones are even more important. And they're going to regulate your body, regulate your growth, and regulate kind of all your bodily systems that are involved. But it is important to note that all humans are going to react differently to these, different things, and that everyone's body is going to grow and change differently. And so with your diet, most importantly there is going to be vitamin D and calcium. And so those are going to be the two main minerals that are used in bone growth. And so it's important to, keep those in your diet growing up. And, they say keep strong bones. Milk creates strong bones. And they're entirely true about that. And so there are many false claims coming out that though engaging in caffeine and drinking caffeine is going to stunt growth. And so this first study that goes against it found that it does not stunt the bone growth, but it stunts the calcium excretion rates. So essentially what that means is your bones aren't taking in as much, or they're releasing more calcium, so they're not going to be as dense. That does not mean that they're not going to grow at the same rate. And in the study by Cleveland Clinic in 2022, it found that those excretion rates were so insignificant that it doesn't even matter, because if you have an even relatively sufficient intake or diet, it's gonna cover that. And so a quote from that study was that caffeine has significantly less effect on growth compared to genetics, diet, and hormones. And that was taken directly from the study. So now, in regards to animal testing, in an experiment by Huang et al. In 2002, it used rodent subjects, and it studied how caffeine and exercise affect their bone growth. And the results from the experiment were the same as the one before, that it increased calcium waste. And it had a slightly lower bone density, but again, even in rodents, it was insignificant. And then it had the same growth rates for their bones and for their bodies. But more importantly to remember is that humans are not rodents, and they're going to react differently to that. And so in regard to human studies, that quote at the bottom you could see from the slide before, the creator or the scientists themselves said rodents digest caffeine differently, and their bones are significantly smaller and thus more largely impacted, which in that they're saying that humans aren't going to be as impacted even as the rodents were. And so there's no effect or direct link on caffeine stunting growth. And then in the study by Stromberg in 2013, they brought up to disregard those cultural myths and those false advertisements and to look at real studies, like one from Nascimento in 2026, where he did observational and longitudinal studies. So he did the study himself, and he found that not only was the growth rate insignificant, but he had even worse side effects of anxiety, elevated heart rate, sleep deprivation, and caffeine dependency, which can all be very dangerous and lead to further issues in the future. So overall, will caffeine stunt growth, or will coffee stunt your growth? The answer is no. And so a quick summary is that although, again, it does increase calcium excretion, it's such a low number that it's not going to affect your bone growth rate at all. And only genetics, hormones, and diet are going to have the largest effect on your growth rate, especially in youth. It's important to remember that animal studies are not going to translate, for the most part, to humans because we're so genetically different. And then in regard to the human studies, they all showed the same results, that, again, a little bit more calcium excretion, but really no significant change in growth rates. And one more thing that all the studies brought up was to avoid those cultural or those marketing myths, in that you should focus more on the other side effects and, limiting those if you're going to drink caffeine. And here are my references, and thank you.